What's up, y'all? It's the Pixelist. This is Blake, and we got a guest here on the show, old Jeremy, joining the podcast today. Now, if you're a longtime listener to the show, you know that Jeremy and I don't know how to say this, Jeremy, but you're kind of a douchebag. But hey, Will couldn't be here tonight. He wasn't feeling well today. And so we're recording our little recap and discussion for episode 115, the Arx Creonum episode. And I said, hey, Jeremy, why don't we bury the hatchet and talk about this episode for CR? So if you haven't checked out the podcast before, my name's Blake. This is the Pixelists Podcast, where we talk about all things nerdy that we love. And today we are diving into some Critical Role discussion for a brief recap and chat about what this episode held and what will be happening on the next episode. A couple of quick announcements. We have our watch party on Thursday night for CR for episode 116, which seems to be the battle with the Weave Mind. We have our stream on Friday, which is actually 2.5 hours earlier, because Will and myself and a few others are going to be playing Path of Exile 2 and didn't want to have the stream conflict with that. So we'll have that happening. Other than that, we will also be having some Sunday fun days here in December for building up to Christmas, where we'll watch The Night Before Christmas. And anyway, you can check the Discord for more information about that. It is very late getting this episode out. We did just have an off week, so we've had a little bit of time to already chat in the Discord about this episode. But what we like to do is do a little bit of a recap to talk about what happened on the episode. And then I'll do a couple of just random thoughts about the episode. And of course, I'd love to know what you thought about the episode as well. So just drop it in the comments below. And if Jeremy is particularly rude, don't worry about it. That's just the kind of person that he is. Right, Jeremy? So anyway, I'm kind of wondering, how much do I lean into this bit? At some point, I have like this internal dialogue of like, I'm talking to this stuffed animal. So sorry, Jeremy. Didn't mean to call you that. So anyway, I did though, because you are a douche. Let me pull up my notes here. Now, we do like to grab the recap and cut it out as its own separate video. So if you're watching just the recap, you can click the link below to get our full thoughts and discussion. But this was episode 115, and this was called To the Arx Creonum. The episode opens up with Bell's Hells chatting with the Mighty Nein about really, hey, what's your stance on this whole Predathos plan? We know Bell's Hells has been pretty indifferent about the gods. Well, we get a really nice foil to that conversation we've had many times over this campaign, with Mighty Nein being like, hey, we're pretty fervently like pro-god. We would like you not to let them be killed. It's very amicable. They sort of chat about the future and what could happen. And the one thing they do agree on is, hey, lewdness must be stopped. He can't be trusted with this power. He can't be trusted with Predathos. Whatever happens, stop lewdness. And there's even a comment from Caleb surmising that lewdness is likely even more powerful than Trent Igathon, which, the Mighty Nein fought Trent at level 20. So what would that mean for Bell's Hells at level 15, I think? Fighting lewdness, who knows? All that to say, the conversation gets interrupted by Rashina, the Golden Hammer, the leader of the rebellion on Ruidus, and is essentially giving them the scoop on what's going to happen next. Bell's Hells will be able to leave and go to the cage around Predathos at the core of Ruidus. Meanwhile, the Mighty Nein will be able to be part of Team Demolition, where they'll be going to the Arx Creonum, using some cables and essentially detonating a series of explosives on the Arx Creonum to make the assault on the Weave Mine. The party has sort of their last moments together. I think Chetney starts to give tattoos to people as well. And then Laudna actually pulls Imogen aside and says, hey, whatever happens, do what feels right. If you get in there and it doesn't feel right, like, we can leave, we can run away. And Imogen appreciates this kisses her, and just says, hey, we can't leave. Like, I'm committed to this. Orem, who has been somewhat secretly suspicious of Imogen for a large portion of the campaign, suspicious isn't the right word, but has been, I guess, more curious about what's Imogen going to do, sees this conversation happening and feels comforted knowing that Imogen ultimately will make the right decision. Meanwhile, back with the Mighty Nine, Veth asks Yasha for some relationship advice. Hey, do you have any advice on how I can spice up my marriage? And Yasha basically just says, you gotta keep it fresh. You gotta keep it new. And they just share some funny notes there together. There are the final goodbyes. Orem pulls Dorian aside and kisses him and says, hey, when this is all over, I'd love to figure out what this is. Meanwhile, Breas is walking up with a portrait to confess his love to Orem and sees this interaction happening and is like, oh, okay, and walks away. At the same time, Ashton goes to Fern and asks her to, in a very Ashton way, do mushrooms with him if they survive this next battle. They have a moment where Ashton says, hey, I like you, and Fern says, I like you too. They embrace. And at this moment, Breas comes by again with another portrait, planning to tell Ashton how much he cares about him, and is naturally heartbroken to see Ashton and Fern embracing. If you didn't really watch the episode, it was just a really funny bit from Sam doing this. The goodbyes come to a close as Imogen has a vision, that same red storm we've seen many times through this campaign. This time, she can hear Liliana's voice. She sees Liliana whipping past her. She reaches out, grabs onto her, and Liliana seems to be fading. She seems to be dying, and is essentially telling Imogen, stop him. Stop Ludinus no matter what happens. Imogen looks down and sees that it looks like her feet are dissolving, like she's like disintegrating. And with a perception check, she looks around and realizes that they are surrounded by figures who are holding Liliana in place. And there seems to be Ludinus in the storm, back facing Liliana with a glowing funnel. This funnel we've suspected that he has. And he seems to be consuming Liliana. And with her final words, she says, please stop him. And we go to break. So we go to break on this cliffhanger. We come back with the Mighty Nine, who are essentially being led by Gaz and Rashina through the city, trying to make it through Kravirus. They run into some guards who are kind of like, what are you doing this deep in Kravirus? And they're like, oh, we're on a mission from the Weave Mind, but they're not buying it. So as they pass on, Jester does invoke duplicity and starts sending Jesters everywhere to try to throw them off the lead of chasing them. And this is ultimately successful in allowing them to sneak through and eventually make it to the Belfry. The Belfry is this temple with this massive bell where people have come in previous times to do communal dreaming together. And it's also at the base of the Arx Creonum, this central pillar within Kravirus. Mighty Nine is sent up with these cables to climb up and set these charges. The charges go off. They have to then climb to the top of this massive fissure that's been created in the Arx Creonum. I think Matt even says that like about a third of it has like cleaved off entirely. Bo does typical monk stuff and climbs up this cable extremely fast. I think she makes it in 4 rounds. And then meanwhile, I think it was like 7 rounds for everyone else. Guards are like shooting down, and also there's guards on the ground who are like shooting up at them. And with this, Jester's cable is actually cut, and she starts to plummet to the ground. Yasha reaches out to grab Jester, but Ashley Johnson rolls a natural 1, and in basically like catching and like pulling Jester to try to catch Jester, Yasha falls herself. So she's, plummeting to the ground. Caleb polymorphs himself into a giant eagle, is going to catch Yasha. We also have a natural 1 from Caduceus. Unfortunately, Jester polymorphs him into a beetle, so he won't fall to his death either. And they basically all ascend to the top of this large open balcony that's been created. from the destruction of these bombs. This is when Matt brings out the battle map, which is just this awesome balcony setting. If you haven't watched this before, typically we just highlight a couple of the big moments from combat just because it can take a while. Summing up this combat, Bo does monk stuff. There's a moment where there's like this glass, like this cannon that shoots out like glass crystals that Bo actually like doesn't just dodge one, but actually catches one and throws it back at either the cannon or maybe one of the other guards, which is a very typical monk thing. There's also this massive fissure, this massive gap where a chunk of the Arx Creonum has like fallen off entirely. And there's a cool moment of of one of the juggernauts rolling a nat 20 and jumping over that fissure. Jester casts darkness. There are shrikes. There's a blade baron who at one point does like 8d10 of slashing damage. And then Bo, I think at one point even like knocks one of the guards off entirely. Gaz is there too, just like, trying to wreak havoc at least. And ultimately the party is able to take down these guards one by one before heading deeper into the Arx Creonum to take on the Weave Mind. And that is where our episode ends, episode 115. So having said that, there's not a lot to talk about on this episode. In fact, I probably won't even split this up as splitting the recap from the main episodes and stuff. There's not a lot to say, but we've been wondering what's been happening with Liliana, who Imogen said, hey, stall for me. Don't let him share the orb. We know also that Rudisborn have been disappearing, or Exaltants have been disappearing. And we know that Liliana is an Exaltant. And seemingly the number 2, especially with Autohan gone. And it seems that either Ludinus knew all along, but needed to goad Liliana in to like an inner sanctum or a secret place where he could finally consume her with the funnel, or found out, saw through her guise and decided to get rid of her. We don't know, right? However, it is confirmed now that Ludinus does have the funnel that the party has is an old copy. It is an old version. And what Will and I guessed was that that the reason they found this funnel is because Ludinus had created a new one, a permanent one. And that seems to be confirmed also with the data point with, I can't think of her name, but the wizard from campaign 2 that they, Astrid, I think was her name, maybe, but that they captured. And she mentioned that he would typically like scratch at the back of his neck, which is a pretty big clue, I think, from Matt that yes, there is some kind of permanent funnel that Ludinus has created. So Liliana seems to be gone, unless this is a trap, which it could be, I guess. Bell's Hells is going to be heading deeper towards the cage. And it seems like we're getting the Weavemind fight. It seems like Thursday's episode is going to be entirely dedicated to the Weavemind. It could be another 5-6 hour episode. But it seems like this fight with the guards was like the buffer to set them up for, chip away with some of the resources to set up for the Weavemind battle. Something else I really liked from this episode was that it was nice to get Mighty Nine's take on the gods of just like, oh, like, yeah, we're totally pro god. Like, oh wait, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean you would think about releasing Predathos? Like, wait, what? So not much to comment on that other than just, I thought it was nice to have those differences there and have just a conversation that, this conversation, you would have expected it to have happened at some point with whether it's campaign 1 characters or campaign 2 characters. And it was nice to finally have this conversation happen between these characters. And though they didn't really, sort of get onto common ground, they at least agreed, hey, we have to stop Ludinus. We have to make this happen. So other than that, not really much else to say. And other than the combat, not a lot happened. The attack has been successful so far. Like I said, we're going to see what happens in Thursday night's episode, and we'll just go from there. So all that to say, we have our Discord that you can make sure you join to stay top of mind on what's happening in CR. We'll have our stream on Friday, and then the watch party Thursday night as well. But yeah, appreciate you all. Wish Will well for feeling better. And Jeremy, I hate you, and nobody loves you. And I feel like here's the deal. If you're not in on this beef, I think I'm sounding pretty mean because it's a one-sided conversation. But, those of you who know, you know. So anyway, much love to you all. See ya.